Going at the quarterback position, I am going with Mr. Dak Prescott as my quarterback by. Dak Prescott, he's a player that has kind of always been I think an undervalued asset in fantasy football, partly because he doesn't run like he used to, and you either love the Cowboys or you hate them. Like there's not a lot of like mediocre feelings about the Cowboys for a lot of people.
Why is that?
I don't know. It's kind of like
it's America's team. They haven't been. Have they even won a playoff game in the last 30 years?
Doesn't feel like it.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going by like dynasties, should Pittsburgh be America's team? Should the 1950 Browns be America's team? They should be.
They should be. Take that. So I think that might have something to do with it too. But we have seen Dak Prescott on multiple occasions be a top tier fantasy football asset, but we have not gotten him a lot of help recently until this year. All of a sudden now we have CeeDee Lamb, we have Ferguson back healthy again. We've got George Pickens. And it's been a long time since there's been a duo that was that talented in Dallas. In fact, the last time that they had two guys that were truly adequate top tier receivers as a 1 and as a 2 was when it was CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. So I went back and I looked, how did Dak Prescott do with Amari Cooper and with CeeDee Lamb?
And Zeke
at the time too.
And to be fair, Dak's offensive line in that period
was a much better offensive line.
Yep. Arguably the best in the NFL at the time.
I agree.
For sure. 2020 was a crazy season for him. That was the season that he got hurt week 5. But up until that point, he was averaging 27.7 points per game, which is just an absurd number.
What year was that?
That was 2020.
Because I remember that year you were talking Dak up before the year, like, hey, I think this is the same thing. I think like Dak's a great buy, he's gonna do good, and then he got all bummed, he got hurt. He's like, this is the best he's ever doing. This was the year, and we kept talking like he's gonna throw for 7,000 yards. He's on pace for 7,000 yards
and 70 touchdowns.
Yes, we're like the greatest player ever.
That was like 5 years ago. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? It's been that long. And unfortunately, like even that 5th game was the game he got hurt, or that points per game would be even higher. So
I told him before the show, I just said to start it, like, I don't want to be redundant. So why now I'm talking to CJ Stroud. Here he is 5 years later.
5 years later.
5 years later, coming right back. Like a dog to his vomit.
Why listen anymore?
Dog to his vomit. That really painted a picture.
Coming right back, baby. It's already been in there once. So Dak Prescott
still tastes all right.
But during that time, so obviously he was the number 1 overall quarterback in points per game that season by a good margin. We were like, that's such a small sample size. The next year, Amari Cooper, it was his last year with the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott finished as the quarterback 7 that year. We've also seen him be a top 3 quarterback multiple times. And I get it. He's a little bit on the older side now. People are concerned about age, but
how old is he? Is he 30?
He's going to be 32 right? during the season. Yeah. Okay. He'll turn 32. So for me, at the quarterback position, I mean, we are still ranking Matthew Stafford, who's going to be 38. Right. We're still ranking Aaron Rodgers, who's going to be 42. Like, we're still ranking all of these players. Dak Prescott has plenty of years.
And at 31, he's only a year and a half older than Pat Mahomes. He's a year older than Jared Goff.
He's 2 years older than Tyler Shuck.
So that's the thing for me. And right now he's going as quarterback 21. So there's a lot of quarterbacks going ahead of him, and I get it. They're young, they're exciting, but if you are a contender, there is not a cheaper contender quarterback buy. Because look, you can go after Stafford and you can go after Rodgers. Those guys are fine and they'll be pretty cheap, but I don't think either one of them have the ceiling that Dak Prescott has this year. We've seen him be a top 3 guy multiple times. We've seen him have great success with good offensive weapons. I just think he's going to absolutely ball out this season.
Dynasty, hot body, hot boy, Dynasty, hot summer. In Dynasty, it's so easy to find yourself on another league just because you just want to draft. Like, drafting's so fun. Fast Draft gives you the opportunity. And, you draft a team, then you set it, forget it. And then you open up the app at the end of the year and you go, look at me. Got so much coin in my bank account now because I did so well. So if you go on there, Fast Draft, use the promo code NERDS. They're going to match your deposit up to $50. And with that, they're also going to allow us to give you a free Nerd Herd membership. So we're going to give you a free 1-year membership to Nerd Herd. Everything that comes with it, extra podcast, and of course the Dynasty GM app, which is the dopest tool out there in the world today when it comes to fantasy football and Dynasty. If you're already a Nerd Herd member, we're going to send you a gift certificate to the merch store. So check them out. Fast Draft.
All right. So if you are new here, this is the Roster Rescue Show brought to you by Dynasty Nerds. And we do a lot of different things here. One, we grade your rosters. We tell you what to do, what moves to make, what kind of trades, all of those kinds of things. You can scan the QR code in the upper right-hand corner that says submit a roster. And we're going to make sure that we go through and we get nitpicky about your team, your league, and how you can make the best use of your assets there. But we also have like what Michael and Mike just did, where if you want to just, hey, I don't know that I want a full roster rescue. I don't know that I need you guys to check everything out. I just need to know about a specific deal or a specific trade or things like that. Then you can just put in a super chat just like these two guys did, and we guarantee to get to those questions. So, in fact, let's get to both of these before we even get to our roster rescues. Michael says, in a 12-team league, start 11, 3 wide receivers, super flex, 0.5 PPR. I have Chuba, Achane, Pollard, and Hall. Is Hall a hold or a trade? What is his trade value? Thanks, #Nerderd. Michael, appreciate you. I know you've been in a lot of shows. Really appreciate you, dude. For me, Rich, I'm curious to hear what you think. For me, this is kind of the wrong time to sell Breece Hall. Right now, there's a lot of question marks about his value. And I know for me, even though I'm interested in acquiring him because I still believe in the player, the situation's murky, and they kind of keep doubling down on this hot hand approach, getting a lot of guys in. We have a lot of good running backs in the room. And I think if anybody's paying attention, now some leagues, they'll just go off name value. They haven't been paying attention, then they won't until September. If you can get full value for Breece Hall, then I have no problem making that happen. But that being said, I would say that I would prefer to just hold him at this point.
So right now, Breece Hall's got an ADP of running back 8 right now. That's the range he's going in. So Irving actually came out and he actually said he had a talk with Breece Hall, said they don't want to trade him, that he is the guy. And honestly, listen, I was never worried about the hot hand kind of thing because I saw Braylon Allen. Like, if you dig into Braylon Allen started hot last year, but if you look at his stats over like PFF, like deep into him, like he wasn't very efficient running back. Breece Hall's tape in my eyes of him coming out of college was special. Like he wasn't good. He was a special running back. And, you know, the biggest thing you have to worry about Breece Hall is like, how does he rebound from the ACL? Like next year would be a whole full season in the clear. Usually that helps guys out. Some people bounce back immediately. Breece Hall looked like he lost a little bit of that explosiveness last year. So if he gets back, and that's what I was a little bit worried about because he's an explosive running back. So for me, if there's any kind of dip on Breece Hall, I have a lot of Breece Hall shares because I was so in on Breece Hall. Like I would buy, but you're right. Now's the time to buy Breece Hall if there's any value dip because they'll be selling him for his potential, and he's still only 24 years old. He's still on a team that does not have a ton of weapons, and he's still a high-end upside running back, right? A guy who has a chance, like if he's fully healthy, he's the kind of running back that could be like running back 1 overall.
Hey,
we're on. There we go. Yep. Hi everybody.
Hi everyone. You'll notice we've got a new face with us today. Thank you for coming back to Roster Rescue. I'm Taylor Christensen, and with me today is Tristan Cook. Tristan, welcome into your Roster Rescue debut. How's it going?
It's going pretty well. I thought by new face you meant yours because it's cleaned up and looking different. But yeah, I was able to hop on a couple of, or I think one or two other times with Pete for just one.
Yeah,
or
it was
two
when you were on a trip.
But this is the first time getting to be here when it starts, so I'm excited to rescue some rosters. That isn't easy to say.
No, it's not really at all.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start out? Pete, did you have a question for us for the beginning of this segment, or do we want to get right into the rescues today?
Straight in. And I need. Oh, there we go. See, we could have planned this, but we didn't. We got a nuke from Alan. It's a 1 quarterback, start 11, and he wrote, "I won the league last year. I am looking to continue to build for the long term. What moves would you make to stay a contender? I have some guys that are getting older."
Well, let's start by going through the roster here. Alan, thank you so much for the nuke. We appreciate starting a show with the nuke. It's always a fun time. PPR, so 1 quarterback, no tight end premium. We've got Lamar Jackson, Caleb Williams, Brock Purdy. Running backs, Bucky Irving, Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon, DeAndre Swift, James Conner, Zach Charbonnet. Wide receivers, we have Justin Jefferson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Lad McConkey, Jamison Williams, Jaden Reed, Chris Godwin, Michael Pittman, Deebo Samuel, and Darnell Mooney, just for fun. At tight ends, we have David Njoku, Travis Kelce, and then rookies in Terrence Ferguson and Harold Fannin Jr. So just right off the bat here, Tristan, I would say this is a 12-team league with a roster that looks like it's in a 10-team league. What do you think overall? Where would you head with this, trying to keep the contention streak going?
Yeah, this is a great roster to be contending. It makes sense that it's at the top of the contender list, considering it just won. I noticed there the draft capital has been depleted a bit. It makes sense to do so, to go for it. So with that, I mean, he has his 26 first. It doesn't look like he has any other 26 picks of note. Doesn't have his 27 first. Has 2 seconds, 2 thirds there in 27. I guess he's got a third in 26 too. But point is this team is all in. So the thing I'm trying to do here is focus on how I can make sure this team is contending for this year and the following year. And then I'm holding on as long as I can to those 28 picks. As you know, Taylor, and Pete, I hate draft picks in the sense that I never hold on to them long enough to use them. I love having them, and then I just somehow trade them before the draft gets there. But this is a perfect example of where I might be trying to use that 26 first. I might try to use the 26 first in Joe Mixon, for example, to trade either for a slightly younger tight end or another starting running back. I think Joe Mixon on that list is the oldest that holds the most value. And that, you could trade it for a running back that might help you get a little younger while also still being productive. If you went the tight end route, that's the only position that I saw that seemed like it didn't have some youth really to it, or promising youth to it. I believe he had Harold Fannin on his team, which I'm a fan of Harold Fannin, but it's a little thin there because I think it was Njoku and Kelce.
And Terrence Ferguson, if you believe.
Oh, did he have? Okay, so I don't hate that either then. But as a contender, you might be wanting to, I would look at running back or tight end as the positions to go after. I would either use Joe Mixon and that first, probably to try to get another running back that's a few years younger.
Like a Jonathan Taylor on this team, or
that was actually
something like that, or
the first name that popped into my mind. Or Breece Hall. I love Breece Hall. He's young. His value is down, which I like that, because if your perceived value is lower than where they've been in the past, and all it takes is one promising season and he could bounce right back up, he's got plenty of youth on his side. So Jonathan Taylor, I think, would be a good option. That's probably the more realistic one of the two.
What do you guys think about Tucker Kraft? You brought up tight ends. This guy has Andrews and Kraft.
I'm personally not a giant believer in Kraft. I think it just goes back to the whole Green Bay conundrum of who's going to get all the targets. And Musgrave was out for a lot of last season with an injury. Before that, it looked like he might have been the number one tight end in the rotation. Kraft has probably earned that going into this season, but I still think that there's a bit of a competition there just for touches and snaps, and overall their identity is still up in the air. So I wouldn't want to trade for Kraft. I think there's nothing negative about him in like a production sense. There's no red flags, but I would rather go out. I mean, we have Njoku and we have Kelsey, so it's hard to think that we're going to get a much stronger replacement unless we go after like a George Kittle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm with the running backs is that we have Bucky Irving. Did you want to?
That's exactly what I was going to say. So really fast, Thomas brought up Bucky Irving here, selling him for a 2026 mid first and 2027 mid first. What do you guys think about that for value?
I love that trade for the draft pick side for Thomas. I think Bucky Irving, I know we talked about this a little before the show started. I think Bucky Irving is one of the more overrated in terms of value players right now in Dynasty Fantasy Football. He is I see him as being viewed near his ceiling, and I don't think the production is going to quite match that, which is going to, I think, tank his value, because when you're viewed as potentially a star or a very high valued player, and then you underperform, it can kind of crater your value faster than if you're kind of not expected to do as much. If I had Irving on any rosters, I would be looking to sell him. I think 2 mid firsts for a guy that I don't expect to perform where he is being viewed is a great deal. For this team, it's a bit of a challenge, because he kind of had, like, Mixon, like I mentioned, is older, and Irving, I think, is a bit overvalued. So I might be trying to move them both. But you're really going to have to go after some running backs if that's the case, because you obviously are looking to still contend. So you don't want to just get rid of them to get rid of them. But I'd be open to moving one or both of them. I think Mixon is closest to losing all value for good once he kind of gets over the age cliff that he has been kind of teetering on for what seemed like a couple of years now. So that's why I went to him first, but I think really I'm probably trying to trade them both. And it looks like the rookie draft has already happened. So I think, you could look at going after some of the younger running backs with one or either of them as well. Like Joe Mixon and that first, or Bucky Irving and the first might get you one of the more proven running backs, and then maybe Joe Mixon you could turn into a improvement at tight end or something like that. But I think that it's good that he won the championship last year, but I don't feel as strong about running back as I'd want to, just based off of the specific top 2 guys on the list here.
So when I'm looking at this roster, for example, Bucky Irving is getting a lot of dynasty value, as Tristan mentioned. I think what we would do best is to try and turn that dynasty value into production value, because I don't see Bucky Irving paying off the same production value that a lot of the other dynasty assets in his range are. So guys who, like Devon Achane, we mentioned Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, those guys are all likely to hold value, and they're likely to produce at a top 5, top 10 sort of a clip. I could see Bucky Irving being like a high-end RB2, a mid RB2, having some spike weeks, but he only averaged 14.4 games or points per game last year in PPR. So that's only good enough for running back 19. To me, that's not matching up with how much people want to pay for his dynasty upside. So I'm willing to trade him. And on this roster where we're looking to stay a contender, I think I'd rather shed some of that. I'm not going to call it fake value, because if people are willing to pay it, it's real value. But I think I'm going to shed some of that built-in value without the production that Bucky Irving is currently carrying. So if I can lose in a trade of value where I'm giving up more because of Bucky Irving, but I'm gaining something on the other end, that's what I'm interested in. So when I look at manager 9, Pete, so we have Derrick Henry, and if we scroll down, we have George Kittle. So can I get Derrick Henry and George Kittle for Bucky Irving? That way I know I can start Derrick Henry every single week. I'm not questioning whether or not to put a certain running back in my lineup. I can just say, this is my, guaranteed, put him in there. And then I also have George Kittle, who kind of solves any sort of a tight end issue. We have him with Brock Purdy in the event that we have to start him instead of Jackson. I just like the idea of insulating ourselves even more and taking away those assets from our opponent, because I think that Bucky Irving isn't going to produce at the same level as either of those two guys as far as the positional value. So even though you're losing out in the dynasty value trade, that's the kind of thing I would be okay doing with Bucky, because you're winning so much on the contending side.
Yeah, I think there's a good point to be made there, that it may be, advantageous for your team to maybe, like you're saying, lose a little on the, value chart to help your team in a different way. I still think there's a little more meat on the bone that you could probably get even while still doing that than Kittle and Henry. I don't know that there's, I don't have a specific example, but I think that if I was on the Bucky Irving receiving side, I would be very eager to make that trade. And so that makes me feel like you might be able to squeeze a little more, but it also depends on kind of the team's roster makeup, because you can't just, invent a player on a roster to make the trade different. So, but I like that kind of idea. Henry, I think Henry's is probably going to finish higher than Bucky Irving in points scored this year. Another one, a perfect time to bring him up here, Pete, Christian McCaffrey. This team doesn't look like it's a contender necessarily. They've got some high value pieces, but I don't know that they have enough to contend in this 12-team league. I don't know where this team falls on the dynasty chart. I'm curious.
So they are 7.
Okay. Perfect. So I would be.
It's tough though, because like 3 and 7 are so close to each other, or like 8 and 3 in value are so close to each other. It's an interesting league here, which
I think could work in your favor, or it could work against you. I'd be going after Christian McCaffrey. There's risk there, but I think there's more risk in production from Bucky Irving than there is in Christian McCaffrey. If Christian McCaffrey's on the field and healthy, I don't think anyone's going to question his ability. If I could get Christian McCaffrey on my team as a contender that is looking to win in the next 1 to 2 years while you don't have your draft picks, I am doing everything I can. So if If you could get Bucky Irving straight up for Christian McCaffrey, I'd offer that. I'd prefer McCaffrey straight up to Bucky Irving, because I think the age is the only thing really working against McCaffrey. Irving has, questions. A lot of people think it's his job and he's going to be a target and touch hog, but I think there's a very real possibility that it's more of a timeshare than kind of the way that he is being perceived. And I don't think there's a risk of Christian McCaffrey, being in a timeshare or anything of that nature. So I'd be curious if I could get Christian McCaffrey straight up for Irving. And if so, I suddenly feel really strong about my team. And I might even then be able to either, squeeze one more year out of Joe Mixon, maybe trade the first for a tight end that you feel a little better about on any given week. Because I know Njoku and Kelsey, Kelsey used to feel great about. I have Kelsey in quite a few places, and he's going to be in my starting lineup, but he's kind of he's going to be there, and I hope that he's going to be usable every week. So I'd rather, if I'm going for another title, I'd rather try to get another player in there that I feel like I can rely on better. It might end up being Kelsey still, and with start 11, I believe it was, having two startable tight ends, one you could throw in a flex certainly wouldn't hurt you. But if you're trying to contend the 26 first, that's a good piece to move while you're still trying to contend. So I'd be interested in exploring that.
So are you saying to trade Bucky straight up for CMC?
If you can.
What's the plus? I think that's an easy, I think you could add a pretty sizable plus on top of that. You should be. Where he's being valued right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would do it straight up. Let me put it that way. So if you can get the easiest thing to do it is in terms of picks. Can you go back to the CMC team, and I can see if there's...
Yeah, so he traded away all of his 2026s.
You could maybe go try to get Bucky or CMC and Jonnu Smith for Bucky Irving. That's again, it's not an elite tight end option, but I feel much better about having Njoku, Kelsey, and Jonnu on my team any given week to have some starting tight end options. If Kelsey doesn't play well, if one of them goes down to injury or whatever, I feel like I'd feel better about my tight end room there as a contender. And I feel better on any given week with McCaffrey than Bucky Irving, assuming McCaffrey is healthy, which I think he's going to be.
So I just want to kind of do a quick sort of recap, just sort of idea for him before we fully move on. But your team has a ton of assets. So while I said it looks like a 10-team team, just because of all the depth, I think as the season progresses, it would do well to try and shed some of that for some future picks just to insulate yourself. People like to have picks instead of veterans come trade deadlines and actual rookie drafts. So I think having some currency under your belt instead of so many veteran depth players would be helpful. If you do get a trade like Jonnu Smith, can I trade away a guy like Terrence Ferguson or Harold Fannin for a future pick? Just trying to collect some capital, because a lot of times when people go all in, they end up with 5 or 6 players on their bench that don't do them any good. I think it's better to try and liquidate that when the moment arises. So just a heads up with a roster like that.
Perfect. Okay, let's go on to Wade. He has let's see, any notes? No, it's a Superflex tight end premium start 9.
Start 9. So shallower starting pool. We have at quarterback, Josh Allen, Caleb Williams, Drake May. Running backs, Tyrone Tracy, Trey Benson, Braylon Allen, Kendre Miller. Wide receivers, Romo Dunze, Zay Flowers, Tyreek Hill, Khalil Shakir, Cedric Tillman, Adonai Mitchell. Some people's favorite, Elijah Moore. At tight end, we have Dalton Kincaid, Chig Okonkwo. Our picks, we have 106. Looks like our draft hasn't happened yet, and all of our other future picks. Notable, they only have 3 rounds in their rookie drafts.
So should we do a rookie mock then?
We can fire it up 106 through 206 real quick.
Best case scenario for this team.
Sure, it's fun that there's still some super flex tight end premium leagues that haven't had their rookie drafts. I feel like most of them have by this point.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, what was the name of it? Was it Tyler? Yes.
Wheezy Steez.
With Tyrone Tracy, it's good to know that he at least has the Giants starting running back.
Or TNF.
I knew you were gonna come up with something on this show.
Garrett's not here.
Yeah.
No, but just in
The
case
memory.
in case his ears start tingling or something right now.
Okay, so
Oh, yeah, I love this. Okay, so let's actually try to pick, though. Rookie, create mock. And what's the name of our loopholes?
we're 106.
Interesting.
Steez.
Yeah, so we'll just take over these. Interesting. Wait, so Wade, oh, I am sorry. This was supposed to be high rollers. I'm sorry, Taylor.
This is how the sausage gets made.
So, but the good news is that's right. You read off everything. So that was just my bad. High rollers. There we go.
Yeah, I've got my 3
A little
monitors,
chaos.
so I can't see as well on your screen, Pete. It's too small for me.
It threw me off because in this one it's saying that he has the 101 still. So
I see.
that doesn't make sense.
There aren't picks past round 3, so
Just double checking everything. Okay,
Yeah.
We're good to go. Okay, so Cam Ward 105. That would have been fun.
So I have seen a lot of drafts where Tet McMillan goes before 106. So there's a world where that happens. But if he makes it to 106, Tristan, that's where I'm headed right away, is to just take the value at wide receiver, the almost known commodity. I know it's a tight end premium. Quinshon Judkins, I think, has potential, but it seems like McMillan in dynasty value and potential production is just the better option.
can you go back to the team for a second, Pete?
Yeah.
I think that's probably like the smarter play. I think with how thin he is at running back and how close Judkins and McMillan are in value, I don't think it's a reach to go running back there. For that reason, I probably would lean Judkins, because I think you can get more receivers in the second and third rounds than you can get running backs in the second and third rounds. But I don't have a problem with either way. I think, me personally, I'm going Judkins. I think that, for a team here that, it's the second in dynasty value. I think it was close to the middle in contender value. I think that it doesn't hurt to try to get, it's near the bottom. Okay.
Yeah, the wide receiver room isn't that great either. That's the hard thing, is you got the quarterbacks.
So it's start 9. So we need to get at least one running back, and then we only need to have 4 total wide receivers. So right now,
we're starting
with Dunze, but we wouldn't have to.
Is it not to start 2 running backs? We don't know.
It is start 2. Yep, they're highlighted. So there's only 2.
Well, 2 are starting, right? We don't know that it's 2 starting running back spots.
I would assume so.
Because everybody has at least 2
in a start 9.
Yeah. That's why I'm more inclined to go with the running back personally, but I do see in contender mode, you're not a contender. So from that perspective, I think that going McMillan is probably the wiser move. But I don't know. I find myself taking Judkins or one of the top 4 running backs before I take McMillan in most of my drafts, kind of regardless of my team build, but especially if I need a running back, even if it's not quite a team that's ready to contend, because I think it's easier to find receivers in drafts and later in drafts than it is running backs. And so when a team is that needy and the values are very similar, I'm probably going Judkins, but I think I'm probably in the minority. I think most people would say McMillan, and I don't have a great argument against it.
The one thing I'll say is if McMillan were to go in the top 5, I'm taking whichever player falls into 6 from the ones currently selected. So if that's Henderson, if that's Hunter, in a super flex tight end premium, we have Josh Allen, Caleb Williams, Drake May. So if it's Cam Ward at 106, that's where it gets pretty tough. I think I would really want to trade that pick because you can probably get a little bit of a quarterback luxury tax from someone versus if it's trading up for McMillan or Judkins. So I think there is a bit of a tier break after Henderson. And in this case, with our quarterback room, if we can make the value trade on the clock instead of taking him and then hoping to trade a quarterback down the road, I think that's the route I would really be going. So as much as we can go back and forth on these 2 players, I wouldn't be shocked if there's actually an easier decision come draft day for this person. At least I kind of hope there is.
Yeah, I don't know those top 5 teams, their QB needs, but that's a good point too. If you don't love either pick, and there is especially if it's Ward, there might be a trade to be made while you're on the clock or approaching being on the clock. That's going to net you a better return than taking whatever player here. So
let's go with Judkins here, Pete. We'll go with Tristan's side. I'm fine switching it up a little bit. And then here at 206, we're going to have some wide receiver options. Out of these guys here, Tristan, who's tickling your fancy for this roster?
I'd take Luther Burden pretty easily here. It would be my pick.
Does it matter to you that we have Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze? Do you like that more? Do you like that less? Does it matter at all?
It doesn't matter a lot. If anything, I think it helps you be sure that you can get whichever one of those receivers ends up popping. Like DJ Moore is presumed going to be the top guy that's the main, producer of fantasy points in the Bears offense. I've heard a few rumors that they're listening to offers, might trade him. I don't think you can count on that, but I think having Burden and Odunze isn't going to hurt you, because I think if this team is going to turn around, it's because the Bears are also turning around their team. And in that case, you'd rather have that than saying, well, I didn't want to have too many Bears shares and go a different direction. So to me, I like Burden, and I don't really consider, how many players on the Bears I already have.
That being said, if there's one team to bet against their passing attack historically, it might be the Bears.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean,
understandable either way.
The alternative picks, I don't feel good about Harris on the Chargers, and Mason Taylor would be the other one in the tight end premium. I don't remember the exact tight ends on this roster, but I don't like.
It was Kincaid.
Okay, so you could
Kincaid, Barner, Okonkwo.
Then I would consider Mason Taylor here probably more so than Harris if you didn't like Burden. But to me, I would still just go Burden. I think that, especially in a 3-round rookie draft, you're going to get plenty of rookie tight ends you can scoop up that could pop more than you will receivers.
Yeah, I think that's where I would head with this too.
Burden at 206 is awesome for, I guess it's super flex, so it's not one quarterback. We've been having so many one quarterback leagues recently, so.
So here you have some, like Tristan mentioned, Terrence Ferguson is an option. Jalen Royals is a name that gets thrown around there. It's pretty clogged situation. Pat Bryant is a name that's popped a little bit. I kind of feel like with our roster, the way things are going, we should lean into a running back pick if we actually want to try and do something. I think in the third round is when you take an upside swing at a position of need versus anything else. Unless, Tristan, do you see a player on the board that might be worth a future second in a couple of weeks come preseason? Something like that would interest me. But other than that, I don't know. I lean towards running backs.
Yeah, I think I don't love the players on the board here, so I don't feel strongly anyway. I found myself drafting a lot of Pat Bryant, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I just find myself being like, I pulled the trigger around this, like, of the players left. He'd be probably my favorite, but I don't love taking him. I think your point about the running backs makes a lot of sense, but I also don't love any of them here. Terrence Ferguson in a tight end premium league, because this is a tight end premium, right?
Yep.
Double check. Yeah. So that is a little appealing, but I still think there are plenty of good tight ends that will be on free agents after this draft ends. So yeah, I don't have if you feel strongly about one of the running backs here, I would certainly listen to that. I think if I was, forced to make this pick, I would take Pat Bryant because I believe he has the best chance at gaining some value. The Broncos, not running back, wide receiver 2 spot is kind of a question mark. I know Garrett has talked about Marvin Mims in the past. Troy Franklin was, a early draft pick. They just spent another early draft pick on Pat Bryant. He's more of the Cortland Sutton role or style of player. But yeah, I don't know. I can talk myself into any of them, which makes me think I don't like this spot.
Well, let's wrap it up then and take Pat Bryant. I think he fits the mold of a guy that could be worth a future second if he pops in the preseason or early on in the season. I would be looking to make that move. Are you happy with that?
Yeah. I mean, if he pops, you can certainly look to turn him around. This team kind of needs, it doesn't have a huge difference maker at any of the running back, wide receiver, or tight end position. So if you get a guy that you think is turning into that early, I might hold just because you don't want to be kicking the can down the road too much. But this team also isn't super close to, being a top contender. So if you can get a hefty price for one of these guys that pops early, I certainly am not opposed to it.
So I'm a little torn with this roster, if we're being honest. I think that as far as contending goes, we have Josh Allen, and I'm happy with Williams and Drake May. As both a contender, rebuilder, doesn't matter. I like both of those guys. So we have probably my favorite quarterback room that we could possibly imagine, which is fantastic. But we can only start 2. And as much as I love Josh Allen, he can't win us an entire week every week until we get to the playoffs. And right now we're missing a running back. Our third wide receiver is either Odunze, Khalil Shakir. Our wide receiver 2, Zay Flowers, also has some new competition in town. I don't want to depend on him every single week to be my wide receiver 2 in production. So I immediately think, well, maybe we should rebuild. Maybe we should trade Josh Allen and try to get Malik Neighbors plus. Maybe we should try to get Brock Bowers plus. Maybe we should look to get someone at one of these other positions that can be a difference maker and cash in on possibly the top overall dynasty asset for someone. And that way we still have Williams and May, but we're at least getting something for our starting roster if we go after like I said, in Neighbors. Maybe we could even look for, Marvin Harrison. I would need a pretty solid plus on top of that, but that's like the lowest I would go for trading away Josh Allen. What do you think, Tristan, about moving Josh Allen, or should we just be looking to rebuild maybe as a whole this year? I know that we went through the draft for them. I don't love the way it looks when they come out of it. I don't think that they're ready to contend, even with Judkins. Even if they got Scatteraboo at 206, they're still looking at Tracy and Scatteraboo. So they don't even have two backfields, right? So I think when I look at this, I'm more likely to tear it down than I am to invest in it for this coming season.
Yeah, I mean, I think Josh Allen is the only piece that you can trade if you're going to go full rebuild, because he's the only one that holds enough value to make it worth like turning it into multiple like smaller pieces that could grow into close to that kind of value. The problem is like he's, one of the top 2 picks in every startup draft of Superflex. So you're really giving up on the top asset that you could probably ever have. And it's a hard thing to make yourself do. I think that if you're open to trading Josh Allen, I would put out if it's on Sleeper, send your message in the group chat or however you guys communicate. That's like Josh Allen's on the block. Like, if you're interested, like send me your best offer or whatever, and see what kind of value you are getting in return, and see if it's even something to consider. Because while I think you could get a lot for Josh Allen, you might not get anywhere close to the kind of value that you think is worth blowing up your team for. And that's what it comes down to. Because if it's hard to say on specific players in return, but if you can get like 3.5 or 4 firsts worth of value for Josh Allen, that's where I start looking at it pretty seriously. Anything below that, I'm just going to say, okay, I'm going to just try to hit on my draft picks and, try again next year if I need to. So I don't think Josh Allen's value is going to tank in 1 year by any means. So I think you could always make that move during the season or in the off season and still basically get the same return you would for him. So I think it's a wise thing to put feelers out and see what kind of value you get back, because you could turn Josh Allen into, 1, potentially 2, and maybe even 3 starting players. And you'd still have Williams and May, who we believe are good startable players. And suddenly your weekly lineup could be a contending lineup. You wouldn't necessarily have the elite option at any one position, but collectively you'd be doing better than you are with your current makeup. So I think it's worth exploring, but I'm not trying to make the move unless I feel I'm blown away by the offer.
So if you go to team, I'm wrong, Matty Ice is his name.
There you go.
Yeah. So he's got Penix and Fields, and then he's got Kamara and Swift, which tells me he thinks he's contending. If those are his running backs, like you're at least taking a shot at it if you have Kamara on your roster. And then they have Neighbors, a 107, and both their future firsts. So I agree with you. Go out, put out an APB, send me your trade offers for Josh Allen. He's on the block. But if you're going to target a guy and you want to go to this manager and say, hey, you don't have a quarterback, but you're close. Like you could maybe take this team to the playoffs. You could do it with Josh Allen. You need Malik Neighbors and the 107. And are you looking for what else on top of that?
Probably the 26 first.
And the 107.
That's where I would start. I wouldn't start less than that. I don't know that you would get, because I think Neighbors is probably worth close to like between 2 and 3 early to mid firsts on his own. So but the 107 is a late first. So like, I think you're at about 3 there. So if you can ask for a 4th, in terms of first round draft pick value, I would ask for a 4th one. You could try to do the 27 one because I think right now I'd pick the 27 first over the 26 one in terms of what players I'm going to like. And it's a little less valuable because it's further out. So maybe that would get it done rather than the 26 one. But it's easier for a team trading for Josh Allen to stomach if they lose one player and a bunch of draft picks versus a bunch of current players, or every draft pick that they have, which I wouldn't want to do that, because then you're assuming you can hit on those draft picks to make it worth the trade. So I like this idea of going after a wide receiver that's a better like rebuild piece, and if you can get 2 more firsts on top of that, like you could turn your team around really quickly.
Yep.
So the trade's Neighbors and 2 firsts for Allen, correct?
Mm-hmm. I think you can offer 107 and the 27 first, and if they aren't interested, then you can offer the 107 into a 26 first. So you're asking for both futures, because to your point, Tristan, if they're competing, they might want to keep that 107 for themselves to actually draft a player. But a lot of people will say, oh, you know what? I can add Josh Allen. I lose one player and these things that mean nothing right now. Yeah, let's do that trade. So I think that's smart to try and load it up 1-to-1 and then get all your capital. So I'm fine sending that offer. I think that's the route to take it. There's also a manager who has Jaden Daniels, Kyler Murray, Anthony Richardson. If they wanted to upgrade, they have Marv, but I doubt with the Kyler Murray and Marv stack that you're really going to get much done there. Is there any other wide receiver that you would target? The reason I'm not saying Justin Jefferson's name is because we're not contending and he's getting a little bit older. I think Jamar Chase is sort of following that trend. He's getting older, and even though he's elite, I don't think we want to invest in the same tier of player as Josh Allen. I think we want to get ourselves.
No, I agree.
What about Drake London here?
He's too far down for me. I would be interested maybe in like Amon-Ra.
So Drake London, I don't hate. The only question is, what are we going to ask for on top of it with that manager? Because they are sitting with
late first
112. Like, yeah, I'm not really interested in getting this managers, because with Gibbs, Barkley, Jacobs, Hubbard, they still have Metcalf and Godwin. I could see this team being a late first next year. And
and I don't think that you cannot, I don't think you can get London and Gibbs. You'd have to start adding on top of that. And that, because I think if you're going in the Drake London tier of receiver, you're hoping to get a significant amount more than we were at with, obviously with the Neighbors tier. At least for me personally, I have London notably lower. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown as a potential player in that tier. Another guy
this guy does need quarterback.
Okay.
So, I mean, Bijan
I would probably offer the same thing that you just did to the Neighbors guy as Amon-Ra and 2 firsts for Josh Allen. And see if it's I'm still doing it where you put them on the block and see what kind of offers you get. But if either of these teams are at all interested, that might be a counter, or that might be this is what I'm thinking. Is this something that we can actually look at a deal for type of conversation? JSN wouldn't be a bad option, but I don't love him as anywhere near as much as I do Amon-Ra. I just trust Amon-Ra, more. So
if we're leaning into the rebuild, which is what I'm suggesting with this team, not a full rebuild. We don't have to get rid of everything on the roster because we like our quarterbacks. We do have some youth at the wide receiver position, but we have Tyreek Hill on our roster. I think right now you can't get a first for him. There's a potential for him in season to the right team to maybe get a 26 first for him. I think he is going to probably hold around that 2 seconds sort of value for a while. I'm not excited to have him on this team. I think we should maybe try to move him. Are you looking for capital before the draft? Or are you looking for a younger wide receiver potentially? What would you do with Tyreek Hill in this instance?
I'd love to get 2 second-round picks in this draft for him. If there's a team that has 2 second-round picks this year, I would offer that.
There hasn't been a team that has. Yeah, there has been no draft pick trades, which is kind of interesting.
I'm curious because with only 3 rounds, I have to imagine draft picks are the value falls off dramatically, right? First round picks are probably hard to trade. And then second and third are kind of probably viewed not very highly because there are like so few players being drafted every year. So I'm still trying to get draft capital, but if there's really no draft pick trading going on, then yeah, I'm going to look at a younger wide receiver and see if I can get.
Could I list some wide receivers around his ADP that's younger, and just you guys tell me if you want him or not, which one you want? Purcell.
I'd take Hill still.
Yep, keep Hill.
Higgins.
Jaden Higgins.
Jaden, yes.
Yeah, I mean that's the draft pick though, because this draft hasn't happened. But I'd like Higgins probably for a rebuild slightly more than Hill.
So high second for that. Then Golden.
Same.
I think I would take Golden because there's a chance he's worth a first faster than Hill becomes worth a first. I don't see Higgins becoming worth a first unless something happens with Nico or if he comes out the gate just like clicking with Stroud. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. But if we're not seeing any draft picks traded at all, then I'm thinking strictly on like, do I want that player, not the future value of it?
Downs.
No.
Yeah, I don't trust that.
Tyreek Hill.
I don't trust the Colts enough to get rid of Hill for that.
That's close though.
Pittman. I'm assuming
I like Pittman more than I like Downs, so I would say I'm more inclined to take Pittman, but I still don't love that offense. So I'm probably going to not make that move. If it was in season, I might make it because that's half a year less of Hill's, perceived production. So I might be more willing then.
Okay. And then let's find one more round. Let's say, who would you rather have, Pickens or Hill? I'm assuming that's Pickens, right?
George Pickens. Yeah. At 24 years old, I'll take George Pickens.
Yeah, I think that's probably a trade I would take. No, it definitely is. I would definitely take Pickens over Hill.
Sweet. Anything else on this team?
I don't think so. I mean, not specific to this team, but I think one thing to keep in mind is know your league. So, like, if this one really isn't having draft picks being traded, like, you kind of can't. It's kind of hard then to do any of the Josh Allen trades we were talking about, where you might have to just try to trade your older players for younger ones and hit on your draft picks, because don't try to take some kind of a discount necessarily just to get the trade done in a league that doesn't value draft picks as highly, if it's not going to help your team get better.
Sense. On to the next.
Let's do it.
Here we have, let's see, Justin, Fantasy League Legends.
Great name, 3-point scooter. So at the top we have Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jordan Love, Running backs, Devon Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Chuba Hubbard, Bashal Tootin, Jarquez Hunter, Jalen Wright. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Jaden Higgins, Kyle Williams, Luther Burden. In tight ends, we have Evan Ingram, Pat Fryermuth, and Ben Sinnott. We have all of our draft picks for the next 2 years.
Yep. Really quick side note. Sorry. It's a 1 quarterback PPR, and it's also Justin's first year playing Dynasty. And so he just finished up the startup draft. So looking for suggestions on how to build a long-term contender.
Really good job on your first Dynasty draft, Justin. Congratulations. Welcome to the addiction that is Dynasty Fantasy Football. We love to have you. I'm going to say that you crushed it for your first ever draft. I see that, you were in second if we were to do Garrett's rankings, which is what I typically look at, but you're in third here. I just like Garrett's rankings a little bit more. I feel like working closely with him on the show, a lot of times he and I are more in step too. So with that being said, the only team that's really outperforming you is one that traded away their future first in 2026 and 2027. So for everyone else, I think you pretty much are at the top of the list. So that said, we have a little bit of work to do, Tristan, to catch up to that team. Are you going to run out and trade away our future picks, or do you have a different idea in mind for this manager?
I actually, for once, wouldn't try to do that. If his goal is to build for long-term success, I don't try to make a lot of draft pick trades right after a startup, because there's so many teams grouped in the middle. Like, there is the one team that is like notably higher, and that's probably going to be the team that is the favorite going into the playoffs, probably the first couple of years, unless, some other big moves happen. But if I am in second, but I'm not that far ahead of, 8th place here or wherever it is, I'm not.
Well, I bet you first place traded with 10th place, and then you look at 9th through 2nd. That's
right.
Almost the same. Let's see. Yep.
Yeah. No, and so I don't hate the idea. Well, actually, go back to the 10th place team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if
they're rebuilding, it's weird that they have Derrick Henry.
That's exactly where I was.
And then 4 first-round picks in the next 2 years. So, are you attacking that team?
I might see what I could get Derrick, or what would cost to get Derrick Henry. I don't hate the idea of going after Derrick Henry at a more reasonable price, but I'm not to the question of how to build a long-term contender is it sounds stupid, but it's really, in my perspective, is hit on your draft picks while not making too big of risky moves until you've established kind of a stronger team. And that's when you can start taking some risks, because the easiest way to have a rebuild quickly is make big moves that don't work out. So I'm probably trying to acquire some picks, unless he thinks that he wants to try to push for the 2 seed, presumably. If you're looking at contending right away, I think the running back position is the one that you probably need to address. Can you scroll down to wide receivers again? I don't remember all of who is on here.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so
that's a nice wide receiver room.
Yeah, I don't think you have to worry about wide receivers. So I'm really looking at trying to I don't think that you could get Derrick Henry for a second, especially in the beginning of a dynasty league. So maybe you would have to offer a first, which is, I know I just said I wouldn't be trying to trade away firsts, but I don't hate that idea if it puts your first at the end of the draft, doing it for 1 year, and seeing if you can can win. Now, the problem is there aren't a lot of like aging veterans on this team that I think you could trade away for draft picks. So you kind of have to decide if you want to push in a little bit. I'm not going all in on this team, not because I don't think it could win, but because at the beginning of a startup, I'm not trying to like push all my chips in, because the last thing you want is to miss and then have, you know, a failed 1 or 2 years and then a rebuild for 3 or 4 years. And then you're like, cool, I just started this dynasty league and in 2030, I might have a good team. Like, that's not the route I want to go. So I think, you know, a small trade for a Derrick Henry type player. I don't know who had Christian McCaffrey, like Joe Mixon, like all of the guys that I've said as rebuilding teams that I'd be targeting, getting rid of, are all guys that as a like near the top team that needs a little bit of running back support, I think would be guys I would target.
Yeah, I think maybe the move I would look to is, can I package a second with some of my lower tiered guys that maybe have some potential? So can I do Tootin and a second? Maybe Wright and a second is more appealing to someone. That for Derrick Henry might get done if they're trying to build a little bit. Can I get Chuba Hubbard and a second for Christian McCaffrey, as you mentioned? You know, depending on what tier of a player we're looking at acquire, I like trying to use a second and moving up in this type of a format, because like you said earlier, Tristan, when there's only 3 rounds in a rookie draft, there's so many more free agents available. So those mid seconds, those thirds, I'm much more likely to get rid of them or to try and convert them because I know that I can always scoop up some other guys to fill up my roster later. So, you know, I think second in contender mode is a really good place to be. I wouldn't be trying to win the paper contest before the season starts. You know, I'm not trying to catch up to this first place team and get the same amount of value. I'm not trying to win on the Nerds GM app. I'm excited to see where we're at. But the one thing that I think we're...
Can I say something?
Sure.
I'm sorry. This is a linear startup draft.
No, that can't be right.
Yeah. 310 B1 is a... And it's every...
Right, it wasn't like a reversal. Interesting.
What?
Interesting.
Where are we?
Let's see. What's her name?
My name is
3 point.
Tristan.
Oh. I thought it was Taylor.
Oh.
102.
Garrett's here or not?
We had 102. Crazy.
So that's so interesting. It was a linear draft.
I wonder if they had
And the team that drafted
got
last
101 for the rookie
is, so he traded up. He traded 2 of those first for Genty.
Interesting.
But that's so...
So
Yeah, anyway, sorry.
I think we got to go into the season and see what we have and then kind of go from there. I could see this team being one piece away at some point. So keeping our draft capital makes sense for the right moves when the time comes. I think the wide receiver room, I love our top 3, but we don't have any proven wide receiver 4 at this point. If you just scroll down a little bit, Pete, just as a reminder for people, we have Higgins, Burden, Allen and Hopkins and Cooper are all kind of like hopeful.
And Kyle Williams too. They
Williams,
have a lot of lottery tickets at wide receiver 4, which is nice.
And we might guess wrong on which ones to start to begin the season. Like there's a chance that one of those guys does pop, but we might pick the wrong one for the first 3 weeks. So if we're going to try and contend, I think that it would behoove us to try and get like a, maybe more of a Chris Godwin, maybe more of a Deebo Samuel, someone who's cheaper but could get us proven touches at that position. So I might look to make a move early on at wide receiver after the first week or two, just to see how is Higgins being used early on. Does Keenan Allen and Hopkins, are they actually in a role somewhere? So I love that.
What about Jacoby?
But
sorry,
Jacoby Myers isn't bad. Jacoby Myers isn't bad. I think
if you're looking for another starting spot,
yeah, if you can get him for a third, great. If you're going to spend a second, I'd rather shop that second for someone else to try and get someone else.
I think that's a valuable point. I mean, he has plenty of options at wide receiver that could turn into something, but if you are, a few weeks in and you want somebody you can rely on, that I don't hate the idea of going after a slightly more proven but not old wide receiver, which is kind of, there's not a lot of names in there. Cortland Sutton would fit that mold. Jalen Waddle's value is way down. He's a little on the higher end in terms of cost, but I love trying to scoop up Jalen Waddle.
I think a shot at Calvin Ridley.
The rebuilding team makes a lot of sense still too, because they have Debo and Cooper Kupp. Does Cooper Kupp fall in that for you guys, or are you staying away from him?
I'm pretty much out on Cooper Kupp. But to get to the additional info of the how do you build a long-term success, I build it through, it's the one QB league, right? So I build it through the wide receiver room, and he already is off to a great start there. So I'm probably next addressing star power at tight end or running back, or both if you can, but one of those other two positions. And then you start seeing where your team falls. And if you want to start taking a little bit of bigger swings at certain players, because that's the way you build success, in my view, and I think in a lot of views of people, is through the wide receiver room. And then once you're kind of a piece or two away, it's usually at the running back position where you can trade for kind of the older producing guys that we have mentioned, like the Derrick Henry, the Christian McCaffrey type players, whoever they may be in any given season. There's going to be running backs approaching 30 that are still productive, whose value should be dropping significantly for dynasty, but for a team that is a running back or two away, that's kind of where you build for long-term success. And then if you want to take a swing at, trading a bunch of picks for a young proven running back to have a bigger window of success, you can. But it's all through building a strong core of wide receivers.
Yeah, I think you're set up pretty well, though, with Achane, Jonathan Taylor, Jefferson, A.J. Brown, and T. Higgins. I think those five alone kind of put you head and shoulders above the middle of the pack. So if you can just work on those other spots, Caleb Williams or Drake May will show up, even Jordan Love potentially. They're all middle of the road, one QB guys. They're all going to get you that 10 to 5 performance. So I like what you've done here. Justin, the Dynasty community is glad to have you. We're happy to have you part of the Roster Rescue Show. Hopefully we can talk to you again next year when you're telling us about how the championship went.
Yes. And if so, please tell me what it's like. I didn't
see that mentality is something that we don't want to have on the show.
Well, see,
Tristan.
Last year was the down year. I didn't have any titles I brought home, sadly. So it's, I'll hopefully be bouncing back, but it's
how many leagues are you in?
17.
Ooh.
Yeah, I had a couple of bye week bounces where I had a bye week and got bounced in the first week I played in the playoffs, which was hurtful. So,
how many made the playoffs in that?
I don't remember. 17 includes a couple of the Scott Fish Bowl and I only play in a couple of redraft leagues. So I think I was in 14-ish dynasty leagues, and I think I made it in 8 or 9 of them. It was just over half, but I only had 2 really good teams, and they both went out in the first round or first playing round. So it was a hurt. It was a rough year.
So
Okay.
we have a super chat here from Dean Roventini. So Dean, thank you so much for the super chat. It says, guy wants JSN and Hampton from me, offering ARSB and a 27 first. I am rebuilding with running back depth, have Bijan, Genty, Henderson. Lack wide receivers. Not sure what to do. So breaking it down again for everyone, JSN and Omarion Hampton for Amon-Ra St. Brown and a 27 first. You said earlier, Tristan, that you're a big fan of Amon-Ra. With this running back room, are you willing to trade away JSN and Hampton to get ARSB?
I'm not. It's not enough for me. I think that JSN is pretty close in value to to St. Brown. He's probably slightly below, and Hampton was, even if it's a 1 QB, he was probably 102. If it's a super flex, he might have been 103. Like, I don't think that a 27 first, wherever it may fall, is anywhere near enough to like take Hampton and JSN with only a slight uptick at wide receiver. It's like, I do, like I said, I really like St. Brown. I think that he's a target monster in a PPR league. Like, you feel really good that he could win you any given week on his own, basically, just by going like 10 for 150 and 2 touchdowns. Like, 10 catches for Amon-Ra is not 10 catches for some of the other guys. He gets targeted so much in that offense. So I really like him. I have him probably further ahead than JSN of most people, or I would think so, but I still am not willing to give up a young wide receiver that now is the only like proven mouth in Seattle and an early first round pick for a slight uptick at receiver and a pick 2 years out wherever, like where you don't know where it's going to fall.
Yeah, I agree. I don't like giving up JSN to get Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that's the wrong kind of move to make, especially if you're lacking wide receivers. Can you turn Hampton into Amon-Ra without giving up a receiver? Can you give up a future pick or something to make that happen? I like that move a lot more. I don't have a problem moving Hampton with your running back room. I think that's maybe a smart move.
Agreed.
If you get great value on him right now before he even hits the field. But I don't want to give up another ascending asset with elite upside in JSN just to get security of that same thing. I think that there's a chance next year, 2 years from now, Amon-Ra and JSN are kind of swapped in their dynasty values given the ages and just their trajectory of their careers. So we'll see what actually transpires. But for me, that's not actually that close. I think I would need a 26 and 27 first for me to be considering that trade. So thanks so much, Dean. We appreciate the super chat.
Yeah, I do think Hampton's the one I would be most willing to trade of his listed running backs, but I agree with everything else that you said.
So this is Bob's team. It's a 1 quarterback, 10 team league, start 9. Roster is currently in limbo. Blew up the team heading into last year's draft and had a great start to the rebuild and hit 4 out of 5 players in last year's draft. Acquired a lot of picks, and then trying to decide how to approach the upcoming draft and if I should make any more moves to try to contend this year, or if I need to sell some of the big names I landed in last year's draft if it's not my window to contend.
1 QB, half point PPR. We just need the roster there, Mr. Roster Rescue Provider.
Bob's discount roster. Here we go. So quarterback, we have Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, Michael Penix, Kirk Cousins. Running back, Bucky Irving, Tyrone Tracy, Tony Pollard, Najee Harris. Wide receivers, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Stephon Diggs. And tight ends, we have TJ Hawkinson, Evan Ingram, Zach Ertz. Draft picks, we have the aforementioned 106, 107, a future 26, and we also have an extra early second in this year's draft. So overall, we have
Mid-second.
a mid-second.
Oh, no, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
I can read.
So we have some picks to play with. I want to just talk directly to the first point, which is, should I sell some of the big names? Am I contending? Am I rebuilding? It's a one quarterback league. Patrick Mahomes is good enough. He's not a difference maker, unfortunately. Running backs, I don't love Bucky Irving as a guaranteed RB1, especially in a 10-team league. In a 10-team league, I think Bucky Irving should be your RB2 if you're contending. So I think we're behind the 8 ball. I'm leaning into the continued rebuild, maybe not shooting for the 101 with this roster, being okay with like the 103, 104, 105 potentially. But I think with where our draft picks sit in this year's one quarterback draft and where our roster is, we might be better off kind of hunkering down for one season so that we can come out next year with all cylinders firing. Tristan, how do you feel with this roster, and what would you maybe look to do with those picks?
So I think in a vacuum, what you said is the right move, but I think that my perception of the 26 class versus the 25 class makes me inclined to not do that. I might be looking to sell Bucky Irving, as we mentioned before, and if you can get earlier firsts in this draft for him, to do that, because I think his value is going to drop by next year's draft. And then I'm trying to either take as many of these young running backs as I can in this draft, or if I needed to piece together, like I think he had the 106 and 107 or 7 and 8.
6 and 7.
6 and 7. Like I might be willing to piece together those and like a 26, like he has 226 seconds, and move up a couple of spots to make sure that I got I don't think you go after Genty because I think the cost is too much. But if you could move up and get Hampton and Henderson at like 102 and 103, or if they, for some reason, didn't quite go that high, if you get them at 103, 104, I'd be interested in going that route of the rebuild and taking the running backs the year where we like a lot of the running backs, and then trying to piece together a few more wide receivers in the second and third round, and in the 26th draft, and down the road more so than a running back class that I don't currently think is very strong in 26. And with Bucky Irving, whose value might be down in 26. So I'm kind of in a surprise to myself thinking that I would do it differently than the way you described it, just because of the 26 class and how strong the running back class is this year. Because I think most of these running backs, their value is going to be up this time next year, and you're not going to be able to get them.
I like that idea. I like that idea. So what I'm wondering is, can we kind of marry the two ideas? Can we take our future 2026 picks that we acquired, and can we just use those to acquire more capital in this year's draft? So can I trade both of the 26 firsts for the 104 as an example? I would be happy to do something like that if that's what we're looking to do, because to your point, we don't expect the 26 draft to be fantastic, and I don't see this roster as earning the 101. With those two things occurring, we might as well trade away that 105, 106, and whatever it is, and get a player we really like in this year's draft that can actually increase in value, so that maybe they're worth 2027 first next year. Bucky Irving, let's talk about him quick. Which pick would you trade for him straight up? Are you just going to go to the 105 manager and say, will you take him, or what would you do with him?
I mean, I'm starting at the 101 and asking him what plus Bucky for Ashton Genty, basically. That, and like if it's a huge gap, you move right on. But I'm probably looking at, can I trade you Bucky Irving and a 26 first for 101? And if the answer is no, can I do it with a 26 first and second? And if the answer is no, can I do it with a 25 108? Like, I'm incrementally getting closer. And if the answer is like, I'm not trading the pick no matter what, then you move on to 102 and you kind of do the same thing over and over. And you just go, how, like, Bucky plus what gives me this pick? And if it's a first in pretty much in this year or next year, but I would ideally do it next year, I'm sending that offer as fast as I can. And I'm taking, whichever running back is there. And if you can hold on to your 106 and 107 picks and potentially get, a wide receiver there, or if one of the other running backs falls a little, like, there's a lot of players at that 106, 107 range that I still think are better than players on a random 26 first. So I'm not necessarily trying to sell my 2 firsts this year in addition to including them to move up if I can avoid it. I'd rather have 4 firsts this year and none next year, and maybe even deplete my seconds next year if it meant that I got to have 4 firsts in 2025.
Yeah, I think we could take the 202 and a 26 first and maybe springboard up to 105 as a potential option.
I think anywhere above the 106 and 7 you have, I would be interested in. The only thing I would be wary of is if the draft starts RB and you traded to the 104 and 5. I don't love that very much. So I might be trying my best to get into the top 3 spots to ensure a top running back. And then if you don't necessarily need to get 2 spots in that top 5 or top 3, but I just would be a little wary of spending a bunch of capital to get up into the mid first and then not ending up being able to get a running back with those picks anyway.
So you and I both love Travis Hunter. Anyone who's seen us do anything for Dynasty Nerds knows that by now. I am torn on this roster. They have Trevor Lawrence and they have Brian Thomas. The 106 could definitely have Travis Hunter sitting there. Are you shying away from him in this instance if that happens? Are you still taking him and just letting it play out however it does? He seems like a polarizing decision for this specific manager.
I'm not shying away from him unless there's only one running back left. I want to make sure that I get running backs on this team. So if Hunter's available at 106 and none of the other top 4 running backs are, I'm taking Hunter because he's still a wide receiver. It's still a good way to build the team. And that's assuming we haven't made any other moves. The thing is if you trade up to the 104, for example, and it goes Genty, Henderson, and Hampton in probably whatever order for those last 2, and you're looking at Hunter or Judkins, and then you have the 106 and 107, so you don't have the 105, I'm probably taking Judkins at 104 and then hoping Hunter falls to 106 and I can take him there. That's the only shying away I would do is if there's only one running back left and you don't have the next pick, because I think this team needs running backs more than it needs a very similar value. I love Travis Hunter, but I think a running back helps this team more at a similar value than Travis Hunter does. But I still think I'm doing everything I possibly can to get into the 102, 3, and 4 slots, or as many of those picks as I can. And then you just guarantee yourself those players.
Are you even just a little worried?
About Travis Hunter?
Him a defensive back. Yeah. They announced signing the defensive back, Travis Hunter. That doesn't worry you in the slightest.
No. I mean, it didn't worry me before Jacksonville said he's going to be a wide receiver and learn the defense. It definitely doesn't worry me now. I think I don't think his value is anywhere close to Brian Thomas Jr., but I think as a talent, on par with any receiver, or his ceiling is on par with any receiver in the league. So he could become better than Brian Thomas Jr. without like a massive surprise to me. Now, am I expecting that quickly? No, but I think the talent is there. And so I'm not worried about, can he do it in the NFL? I think the only risk is that, like, if Trevor Lawrence doesn't play well, or if he does, if Thomas gets more of the targets, then Hunter, as a like ongoing career path thing, if he's stuck behind him, then I don't think he'll reach that level of production. But I still don't think that I'm not worried about him.
I just realized that they posted defensive back and wide receiver. That's too cute, man.
Yeah,
my heart is too.
I saw both.
Yeah, I just now did. So
they should have. I saw somebody say they should have made him be on, like, one on one side of the table and one on the other, and it would have been. But they didn't. So no, I'm not worried about it. Like,
okay.
But to your question, Taylor, I'd be happy to add Travis Hunter, but not at the expense of one of those top 4 running backs. But I think there's a real possibility that at 106, none of those top 4 running backs are on the board, and Hunter is gone, and then you would not be thrilled with your options if it were me. So that's where I'm, even if I have to overpay a little, I'm going to overpay to get into that top 4, especially. Ideally, the top 3. Like, if he can walk away with 102 and 103, or if he can walk away with 101, 102, and 103 by getting rid of his 26 picks and Bucky Irving, like, I'd sign up for that every day of the week.
Yeah, I think that trying to get into the Hampton Henderson tier is the smart move. And I see what you're saying. If Judkins does go before that 6th pick, it's going to be tough. So just being honest with you, Bob's discount roster, there is some trepidation heading into that draft. So with the 202 and 206, it's pretty easy to move up from the 106 and 107. Like, I think you can make those jumps. People will be willing to move. It looks like this league has all kinds of rookie pick trading. There's 26s have been moved, 27s. Some people have 2 picks in this year's draft. So it looks a lot more active than the last one we did. Would you be moving Tony Pollard and Stephon Diggs in this draft? Are you going to hold on to them and use them to start the season? That's kind of where my brain goes to, is I don't love having Tony Pollard and Stephon Diggs if I'm not all in this season. I kind of feel like if I can liquidate them for a mid-second, I'm looking to do that. Pollard, that might be wishful thinking, but I don't know. Tristan, how do you feel about those 2 names with this roster?
If you can, like, I would be happy to include them during this discussion to get into the early first as throw-ins or sweeteners to get it done. If you can, like, that's a great option. If you can't, and you end up successfully getting into that a different way through just draft picks, I'd be happy to try to recoup some draft pick capital by trading them off during the season. I'm not by any means married to them on the roster. They are 2 great examples of players to move. So from that perspective, like, yeah, I would be looking to move them. But like, I think your main priority, I think it should be in the way that we discussed it on this roster, which is first getting the draft picks that you want, and then second, trying to recoup later. And those would be 2 great names to use to recoup. Just because, like, or to include in the trade discussion for the picks, but if not for the recoup, because you can, like, they're not going to help you. But if you don't pull off and get the running backs, your team might not be really making a turn in the next couple of years anyway without some big moves. So it kind of doesn't matter in that perspective. If you can trade him and get more picks in the 26 draft, great, but I still don't like the draft very much. And then the running backs are all gone from this year and their values are probably increasing. And then you're trying to like do this all over again, but with a draft that we don't like as much as of now. So yes, to answer your question very shortly, yes, I would be trying to move them.
Would you put us in contender mode quick, Pete?
Yep.
So we're all the way down in 8. And I think this is probably where we're going to finish-ish at the end of the season. If we didn't have major changes, I feel like there's a pretty accurate view of what our roster looks like. So even if we are able to add Judkins at 106 and we get Tet McMillan, or maybe we take Caleb Johnson or whoever it is at 8 or 7, I'm not sure that that's enough to put us in contending for this year. So I mean, Bucky, Irving, Pollard, Diggs, all these names. So Bob's discount roster to me sounds like he's already planning to be selling. It's his discount furniture store. Everything is on sale. So I would keep that mentality for this coming year and build around McConkey, build around Thomas. But I think the direction you're going with here, Bob, is to try and get the best you can out of this year's draft by liquidating the 26 picks and the veterans that you have right now. So if you can turn any of these players into rookies for this year's draft, I think you're on the right path. So
yeah, I would just add, like, if you make those moves and you get all the running backs, you might be contending much quicker than you realize. So that's where I wouldn't plan on being a contender. But if you're able to successfully make those moves and, if you end up with 3 running backs of the early rookies this year, and maybe even if you get one of the second round guys and 2 of them hit, suddenly your team looks like it could be a contender much sooner than I think it did going into the draft. So, yeah.
Totally agree with you. So we have one more left here on the docket. Am I right, Pete?
Yep, and it's Christopher, who is currently watching along with us. 1 quarterback, 12 team, doesn't say how many, 9 starters. And that's all the info.
Well, we have had our rookie draft. We'll go through it here. We have quarterbacks, Bo Nix, Justin Fields, running backs, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, Tyrone Tracy, Bashal Tootin, Tajay Spears. Wide receivers, we have Jackson Smith and Jigba, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison, DJ Moore, Luther Burden, Cedric Tillman. Tight ends, TJ Hawkinson and Tucker Kraft. We have had no action on our future draft picks. Everything is intact. Another 3-round draft. It looks like most of these 1 QB dynasty formats only do 3 rounds in their rookie draft. So same things that have applied in the previous roster reviews so far as that goes. So what do you think here, Tristan? I'll throw it to you right away. What do you think of our roster?
I like the potential of this team down the road. I think it's probably not quite good enough to crack into a serious contender this year. Can you scroll down to the wide receivers again?
Yes.
But with that group of wide receivers, I don't think I'm really trying to adjust a lot, with the potential exception of DJ Moore. And that's just because of what I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Chicago. There were some rumors about a trade. He's not old, but he's not young. He's notably older than your other top 3 receivers. So from that perspective, if there is a move to make, I'm probably looking at DJ Moore as the what can I turn DJ Moore into? whether it's, rookie wide receivers in this class that just got drafted. I know people don't tend to like to trade the players they just drafted, so that might not be really a viable option, but you could certainly look at, similar to how I mentioned with the Josh Allen potential trade earlier, is put him on the block and just say what are you willing, he's on the block, who's interested in what are you willing to offer me for him, and see if you get something that kind of resets a little bit of your age, but not really you don't want to go too risky. And if I don't know if you can let us know or not, if draft picks don't tend to get traded in this format very much, but I think that if you could get a guy a few years younger than him, even if they're not necessarily going to produce quite to the DJ Moore expectation this year, but if you get a few years of age and presumably that kind of production within a couple of years, I'd be interested in that, because that's where a lot of your young pieces will start, I think, turning into, higher valued and producing dynasty assets.
I think that this is a roster with, I'm going to say, hidden potential. There's a lot of players, especially at the running back position, if you scroll up, Pete, who can give us production while we wait for these rookies to develop. So we have Jaylen Warren and Tyrone Tracy to start the season. I mean, week one, we feel like we have starting running backs. If we don't want to go out with Quinshon Judkins, there's a good chance that Henderson and Judkins could be viable starters after the first couple of weeks. And so you just roll them out every week. We only have to start 9 guys. So if we don't move DJ Moore, we've got our 4 receivers, we've got a quarterback, we've got a tight end, and that leaves us needing to get 3 players. So if we can do 2 running backs and anything else, we are set. I love the idea of this running back room being low investment but high potential for the future. I don't think we need to go out and invest anything into this. I think we can see how it goes, because if Tracy does really poorly week 1, there's a good chance Judkins is good to go, but I don't necessarily feel like starting both rookies week 1. That's not usually how I go about doing my fantasy rosters. But it says they did last year, which was our startup, but everyone thinks too highly of their players. So it's tough to trade when everyone thinks highly of their players, but that might mean that they are overvaluing the way that their roster looks right now. So if you can find some of these managers where on paper they are thin, they might be willing to make some preseason moves. That's usually the way that I read that sort of information. The one biggest caveat with this roster, I think, is Justin Fields. If he comes out of the gate and he's a viable top 3, top 4 fantasy quarterback in 1 QB, I think you can seriously view this roster as a contender. If he comes out flat, now you're looking at Bo Nix, who's fine, but he's not likely to be a top 3 every week kind of guy. So that's I don't want to be hyperbolic and say that, it's all about Justin Fields, but I think that his success is going to do a lot to determine your early on fantasy success. And if he flops, you might find that this roster would be better off trading away guys like DJ Moore, Tyrone Tracy, Jaylen Warren. But at the moment, I like holding on to those names. Are there any moves that you want to make? I'm kind of holding steady myself, but I hate to tell people don't do anything when they come on and do a roster review. So what moves can we find for them?
Well, so he mentioned that he could trade Tracy a third and Hawkinson for Laporta. I'm not particularly interested in that move. It's just not like TJ Hawkinson's. You want to trade Hawkinson and DJ Moore. I think giving up Tracy and Hawkinson and a third, I would aim a little higher than Laporta. I know Laporta had an amazing first year and then had a down last year. I don't hate the idea. It's not like I dislike Laporta, but I just think that that's not enough to get rid of or it's not enough of an improvement for me to get rid of those 3 pieces for one. To the DJ Moore side of it, can you click on teams 5 and 10 in the contender mode here? So this team could be good this year. This team could also have a surprisingly bad season. There's not a ton of there's quite a bit of veterans that they're counting on every week here. So I might be interested in seeing if you could move, to what Taylor was saying. It's tough when people are valuing their players too much, but it might mean you can get picks cheaper than you should. So if you can interest this team, or if you want to click on team 10, they're both teams that might consider themselves contenders that don't have a ton of wide receiver depth, that if you can get their first round pick and something, I'd be interested in that kind of a deal with DJ Moore, because the difference between 5 and 10 isn't that large. And if you could end up with an early first round pick plus a player that you got for DJ Moore, I'd be pretty excited about that. So I know I just spent, 15 minutes talking about not liking the 26 class, but it's not going to be completely devoid of talent. So I'm not saying, sell every 26 pick you possibly can. If you hadn't made your 25 draft yet, I would be saying to try to get 25 picks over 26 picks. But if you could turn a player into an early draft pick that people, because their team is not as good as they think they are, and you suddenly turn it into a mid to early first in the following year, I love that kind of a move. I don't know what you think about that, Taylor, but something where you if teams love their players and so there's not a lot of player movement, find a guy that loves DJ Moore and take advantage of that the other way and say, okay, overpay me for this really good guy in just draft picks. I don't need, you value your players really high, but let's see what kind of deal we can get, because you need a little receiver help. And, I need to get DJ Moore off, or I'm willing to get DJ Moore off my roster because I have guys I like better than him. So that might be something.
Team 11 is maybe where I would go for what you just mentioned, Tristan. We have Caleb Williams is their quarterback, and their wide receiver room is Jerry Jeudy, Deebo Samuel, Michael Pittman. So that's pretty weak. So maybe they're looking to get DJ Moore on their roster, and I could easily see this team finishing in the bottom portion of 2026. And maybe you asked for their 2027 because they've got Joe Mixon, Travis Etienne, like I mentioned, Deebo and Pittman. These guys could all be dust by the time 2027 rolls around. So I think maybe you swing for a 2027 first and see what else. They have Emeka Egbuka. Can I get Egbuka and a 27 first for DJ Moore? I'm willing to make that move.
I'd hammer that if I. Yeah.
But I think that there's a chance that that move is out there. And if I got to send a second in that deal to make it happen, I'm fine with that too. So if I give a 26 second and DJ Moore, but I get Egbuka and a 27 first, I'm willing to pull the trigger on that move. But that's where I'm headed with this. I'm not going to make a lot of other moves. I really think we are positioned with roster construction to give it a go to start the season. I know our contender mode looks bleak, but Justin Fields could turn things around pretty quickly for us if he's putting up 30 points a week. So just see kind of how it shakes out overall. Was there any other thoughts or strategies you would take with this roster, Tristan?
No, I mean, I think that what you said, sometimes the best strategy is to watch time elapse and see how it molds your team, because there is a lot of finding that the decision point where to go one way or the other. But I don't the waiting till you have to make the decision instead of trying to preemptively make it and then maybe making the wrong decision. It's hard to sometimes hold. but I think that's a good suggestion in this situation. And, you know, with the noted exception of if you can make a DJ Moore trade for something that is very like friendly for the direction that you think you're going to go in, where like that might speed up your decision a little, but it's likely that DJ Moore is going to be at the tail end of his career by the time this team is really a top contender. If you wanted to wait and see how DJ Moore looks, if he comes out of the gate looking really strong, and as you mentioned, you know, Justin Fields is, or maybe Bo Nix and the Broncos offense really take a big step forward. If one of them is a surefire starter and DJ Moore's looking kind of like Amon-Ra in the Lions, but for the Bears, suddenly maybe you don't want to move him and your team just got a lot stronger without making any moves. So it's something that, like, June and July and early August, it's hard to not make moves, but sometimes on a team like this where you kind of have to see what you have before you know which direction to go, I might hold off unless you get a big time offer for a player like Moore.
Yeah, he made the joke that he would have all of the Ohio State players if he made the move.
Of Ibuka? That's fair.
But you know what? He has Fields, Henderson, Judkins, JSN, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison. Like, he really
his
does
backup running or tight end, Cade Stover, too.
No, he really does have. But you know what? Getting all the Ohio State players is not a bad route to take when you're trying to win fantasy football.
If they're really good. J.K. Dobbins just signed with the Broncos.
This is not a Broncos show.
No, I'm just trying to think of other Buckeyes that he could get.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Christopher, for the roster rescue. As always, it's great to have other Dynasty people who are as invested into this sport, this hobby as we are. It's great to get to do what we do and be here with all of you live and to go through all of this. It's my highlight of the day, other than when my kids wake up and give me a great big smile. Everything else is downhill until we do the roster rescue show. So great to be on here with you, Tristan, and as always with you, Pete. Is there anything that you'd like to tell everyone before we head out today?
Rock on.
Tristan?
I don't know if I'm allowed to, but Tyrone Tracy over Cam Scadaboo, that'll be the hill I die